American Gunsmithing Institute presents an interview with Jeff Cooper with your host, Gene Shuey.
Hi, I'm Gene Shuey, and we're going to be doing some little bit of reminiscing and so forth with Jeff Cooper. And we're going to kind of jump into his head, find out a little bit about his life and where he is at this point too. Jeff, when was the first time that you were introduced to the firearm, and what kind of firearm was it?
Well, we're talking about an actual firearm with gunpowder. That would be about 11. I had, of course, BB guns before that. But I would say the first weapon I owned was a model 34 Remington 22 long rifle. And it was, of course, the apple of my eye, and I still have it. It was a very good gun in its day, and it's just as good today.
Yeah, was it target shooting or hunting or?
I would say plinking. There are various categories of recreational shooting, and plinking is informal target shooting, without taking scores and paper shots. You shoot at pine cones and so on. So that's what most people do, and we shot a good deal at Catalina Island when I was a boy, and on the boat we shot at sharks. In fact, the only shark I ever saw iced, dead,
yes,
with one round was hit by that 22. It got him in the brain, and even a shark can't work with a bullet in his brain.
And what part of the country was this?
Always in my early days was in the West Coast.
The West Coast.
I was born and raised in Los Angeles, but on the summers we generally went to Catalina Island, where my family had a summer house, and I played around there between the school sessions. And then the rest of the time we traveled a good deal, and my father was a great wanderer, and he liked to get in the car and cruise off to all sorts of parts, places like, well, the Sierra Nevada and Arizona mountains where I live now. We covered a lot of ground that way.
You went to Stanford, wasn't it?
That's right.
And what did you get your degree in?
I got my degree in political science, which is a pretty silly major because there's nothing less scientific than politics. But I got it. I started out in engineering because I was thinking of going to the military academy, and an engineering degree is a help that way. But when we decided to go on my own to a private school, I shifted from engineering to poli-sci, and then I got my master's degree in history.
In history. And through the years that I've known you, you've always been interested in the English language. Where did you get that influence?
Well, the English language is a fascinating subject, and you can make a hobby of just fiddling around with English. My father was a great reader, and he made sure that I read a good deal. And it's in reading that you learn about style and form and whatnot, and I don't think you can get it any other way. I don't think you can be taught English. I think you have to acquire English on your own, and it becomes a fascinating study. It's a weird language, and you can do all sorts of tricks with it.
Yeah. I recall that you've always been fascinated with words, and I recall at your house at Big Bear that you had this big, giant dictionary in the living room, and it was on a swivel, and it was probably the biggest dictionary that I've ever seen. And when we would talk or we would hear a word that was quite unique, if you will, you would go to that dictionary and look it up and find out everything that was connected to it. How did that ever start?
That's just fun. It makes a nice hobby, and you can play with it if you're interested. Of course, not everybody is interested in the same things, and some don't find it so, but I thought that word derivation and word analysis was just a hobby like watching baseball. I just enjoyed it.
Yeah, you've certainly done a fine job with it, and I think it really reflects in your writings too, because every once in a while we'll read something that you have written, and it'll be a word that somebody's got to look up.
Well, I don't know that acquiring what you might call exotic vocabulary is necessarily a good thing, but I think we should remember that there are no such things as synonyms in English. If there's a word that means something, there's another word that means any variation of it.
Yes.
So we played around that way, and well, variations in the classics in Greek and Latin are great fun. Winston Churchill, for example, thought that Latin should be an essential, but Greek should be fun, or a treat. And I find it so. I don't know any Greek, but I do know the alphabet, and I do know a certain amount of derivation.
Then, when you were in college and after you got your degree, is that when you decided to go into the Marine Corps? And what made you decide on the Corps?
Well, it just happened. I got interested in the military in high school because our high school had a ROTC battalion, and we had a shooting program. Seems weird today in our present climate of material, but we had a shooting range underneath the bleachers, and the thing that got me going was the fact that if I went out for ROTC, I could shoot. And if I made the team, I could get free ammunition on my own. And this was a great lure for my part. So I, instead of signing up for football, I signed up for ROTC and got into a lot of shooting that way. But I was a shooter before I was in the military. So it wasn't that I was taught in the military. I got in the military because I was already taught. I mean, already instructed. And so that led to one thing and led to another. Now, I was in high school ROTC, that was infantry. Then at college at Stanford, we had a field artillery battery. And the field artillery was horse-drawn, with horses drawing a French 75. And they had a pistol program. And they had certain requirements for these reserve officers to check out with the pistol, which of course was the 1911. And I did all right with that because I was just more used to it than most of the students are. And that's where I got the pistol that I carried in World War II. That was an award at Stanford. Well, the program at high school was rifle. We used a .22 Springfield rifle trainer. I didn't get involved with the service pistol until college, because in college they had a field artillery battery and the officers were supposed to qualify with the auto pistol. As a matter of fact, we had to qualify mounted because this was a horse-drawn battery. And I may be the only surviving citizen who has an expert rating for mounted pistol shooting from a galloping horse.
Did you pick a favorite at that time, a rifle over pistol or anything of that nature, or did you like them about equal?
I like them both. The thing is that to shoot a rifle, you have to have room. You can have fun with a pistol at a 10-meter range, and so you can get those all sorts of places. But the rifle, you have to have space. So, as a result of that, I did more pistol shooting after college than I did before. Although, given a choice, now I live on a ranch where I can do anything, and I probably do more rifle shooting now than pistol.
Yes. And at that time, did you consider the pistol more of a defensive thing or a sport thing?
I was instructed to the effect that the pistol was a defensive weapon for officers who had to do other things, had both hands free and that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So I was interested in the pistol that way. Later, I got more interested in the field work with both pistol and rifle, but I found that an awful lot is not understood about the field use of the pistol or the rifle. That's where this thing began, an attempt on my part to examine the use of the handgun and the rifle as being taught and how it's being used in the field. What actually happened, who did what, and how. And that led to opening all sorts of doors.
Yeah, that's a very interesting subject, and we'll probably get into that a little bit more in detail here in a minute. But when you were in college, did you meet Janelle at that time, or was it shortly after?
I met Janelle in high school.
High school?
Yes, but we didn't start dating in the sense that they use the word until college. I was a year ahead of her, and so when I was a freshman, she was she was still in high school, and so I was up there in my first year without her. But then my second year up there, I was a sophomore. She came up, and she, of course, was a freshman. And so we started dating seriously when I was, say, a junior in college, and she was a sophomore.
When you got into the Marine Corps and so forth, and if my memory serves me correctly, you were about to go overseas, and you and Janelle decided to get married. And I believe it was in the wintertime, and I believe you got married, what, in Carson City or
Minden.
Minden, yes, which is slightly below, yes. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that was a result of the emergency caused by the war. You see, World War II was a serious war, and it completely dislocated society. Well, I was in the Marine Corps already, but I was commissioned on the 6th of September of 1941, and the bomb dropped in December of 41.
Yes.
So I had about 2-3 months seniority when the war began. I was already commissioned, already there. And so I took it at that line to get organized insofar as one can and under the circumstances. Now, Janelle and I decided that we wanted to get married because when everything was going to be upset, and we wanted to get sorted out first. So we ducked over the hills, over the Sierra from Sanford, where she was. She was still a senior there when I was out. And we ducked over and went up to across the pass, and we got stuck in the snow down our summit. I've written this down several places. And I finally got free to the other side, and we had a 6-day honeymoon at the Riverside Hotel in Reno. And then, of course, I had to go on overseas.
Yeah, the Justice of Peace, and it was late at night, too, wasn't it?
It was too late. As a matter of fact, everybody had secured. We were married at, as I recall, 15 minutes after midnight. And
that's pretty good.
Yeah, right. And we got back to the hotel, Riverside Hotel, by 1 o'clock in the morning.
Uh-huh. Well, then when you went overseas after that, tell us a little bit about that.
My commission was pretty senior at the time because while everybody else was getting organized, I was already already had my degree. So I was assigned to seagoing. I didn't put in for it. No, you never get what you put in for. But maybe it's a good thing because the chances were probably better. But my class went to seagoing, and we outfitted most of the major ships in the Navy. And I was aboard the USS Pennsylvania, which was an old battleship, not one of the big new fancy ones, but a very well formal type old sir. It mounted a 14-inch gun, and it was used only as a shore bombardment outfitter. When we were most of the war, that was actually protecting transports, anti-aircraft. We had a terrific anti-aircraft battery, and supporting landings, naval gunfire. We smashed islands to pieces before the troops landed, and we did a pretty good job. Some places better than some others. As a matter of fact, we learned by doing the hard way, and at the Gilbert Islands, we learned at Tarawa, for example, that you've got to get closer. We didn't use the fancy fire direction system for shooting across the horizon. For reducing shore bombardment, shore positions, we had to go in until we scraped bottom, practically went ground, as close as we could get, and fired point blank, one round at a time from the turret at a range of 1,000 yards, maybe less. And that was a pretty interesting assignment because once the new battleships began coming off the line, the old battleships could be secured. We didn't need them anymore. So we said, all right, if they get blown up, it's okay. We've got more. So they sent us in on some pretty hairy operations. One I recall distinctly. The captain decided to tell us what we were going to do. He didn't have to, and it's not usual in the Navy to tell people what they're going to do. But he got us together at the boardroom and said that we were unlikely to make it out of this one. And because the Japs had been there for 25 years, and they had this thing organized like Singapore. They said the defenses of this island are going to be very difficult. So if you want to adjust your thoughts, why,
Yes.
you're probably not going to make it out of this one. Well, it turned out that was not the case. The NIPS weren't as well organized as we thought. And we found that even though they had those islands for 25 years, they hadn't done very much in the way of fortifying. So we went in there expecting a real bloodbath, but that isn't the way it turned out. I'm glad to say we had an interesting party on that one. And after that, I was assigned to go in on the beach after a shoot and analyze the results of our gunfire. So I was wandering around on the beach looking at the results of our guns, which were pretty decisive. The NIPS built blockhouses which were 20 feet high and covered them completely with camouflage. Mm-hmm. Well, before we started to go in on an island, we'd send the air in, and the aircraft would scrape the camouflage away. So when we finally went in, all the camouflage was gone, and we could just see these big, heavy positions. So we could go in through arm's length and reduce them, and we did very well. My battle station was at secondary aft, and I was just above turret number 3. First, turret 1, 2, and 3 and 4. I was just above turret number 3, and that day, Les Dunn, a friend of mine, was in charge of turret 3, and he fired 9 rounds of 14-inch high capacity, and he got 8 direct hits.
Really?
Yeah. He fired a little bit high on the first round, and then on, he just put that crosswire right in the embragure, and wham! And it worked very well. It didn't solve entirely the problems. That ride into the beach is always a little bit hairy, but we helped a bit after a while. We never got hit in that job. So while we expected to, we were assigned that way. We never took enemy shell fire. Well, until later in the war.
How did you find the Japanese small arms equipment? I've known you've always had an interest in that, and you were pretty sharp in evaluating small arms.
Well, that was sort of a coincidence. Down at Guadalcanal, I was given the job of analyzing Japanese small arms. Mm-hmm. And that was because I was a gun buff. I was already a gun fancier, and more or less informally, not from Washington, but from the Navy. They gave me the various Jap weapons. Their rifles, the light machine gun, which was a very good gun, and their pistol, which was a terrible, really lousy operator. And so I would take these things apart and see how they worked, and then write up a little sketch on how you service one of these weapons if you happen to have one. And once we took them up took them topside and fired them, see how they worked, and it was sort of a sideline.
Yeah, this is something that's kind of stayed with you all of your life, isn't it? Evaluation of firearms and then getting into actual designing of some of them.
Yeah, well, I'm just a gun buff, as you are.
Yeah.
I like guns. I find them interesting. I play with them and work with them. And so this was a sort of a sideline in the service. It was not something assigned to me. It just sort of happened. And as a result, I participated in several training manuals after I was pulled in from the Pacific and sent to Quantico with Marine Corps schools. And there I helped with the preparation of documents for issue to people who are going to use these things.
Mm-hmm. Now, after the war, what decided you on leaving the Corps?
I felt there was no place to go. I had achieved no distinction in World War II. I had no medals.
Yeah. You rose through the Marine Corps officers rank rather quickly, though, didn't you?
Yes, that was a chance. I just happened to be there, and so I went up very quickly, and for the longest rank I held was at a major, and I was a major for about 7, 8 years. But I went through the lieutenants in an awful hurry. And there was no reason for that. I wasn't qualified, but what are you going to do? We had 11 million men under arms, and what did they do? Grab a guy off the street? Or maybe a junior lieutenant such as I at least read the book. So I went up very quickly. That was very fortunate. And I was very lucky in that. The situation there at Quantico was pretty electric because that's where the thinking goes on.
Yes.
And at Quantico, first I went through the schools, and then I was on staff as a teacher of combat intelligence, and I had lots of fun with it.
Yes. How was your transition once that you realized that you were going to leave the Corps? What did you think that you were going to do, or what did you want to do once you left? And that's kind of traumatic for a lot of people that leave something that they really love.
It's difficult. I decided to get out because there were too many people for the Marine Corps to use. They had, I know, something like 400 battalion commanders, and they only had about 12 battalions. So it looked to me like we're going nowhere. And I thought, perhaps if we're not going to have any more wars, you see. We won the war, we wiped out the enemy.
Yes.
Germans and Japs were from now on, peace on earth, goodwill of men, everything is just solved. So I said, that being the case, maybe I better be a civilian. But I made a very poor civilian. I didn't do the job well at all.
Then once you got out, where did you live, and what became one of your influences in taking up firearms as, we'll say, competition or a study or even a writing?
That's where I started.
Okay.
I lived in Los Angeles for a while, but then because I was trying to write for Peterson, the magazine publisher.
Yeah, what year was that?
You know, I'm sorry, it's a long time ago, I'm not sure, but it was at the time that I was getting out of the service. I got logged in by Peterson to write books. So I wrote, because I had done these manuals at Quantico, at least I had.
No, I didn't know that.
I had a chance putting paragraphs together. And so I got to doing that, and I went up to Big Bear because my wife family had an establishment at Big Bear, and we got involved with a ski lodge. And because we were involved with ski lodge, I decided we ought to have something to go on in the summertime, because in the summertime there's not much skiing. So what happened was we decided upon a quick draw contest, a Western type thing, big hats, quick draw. And the reason I thought about this is because I'd been playing with a pistol all this time. I said, let's work out a competition and put on a show and advertise it, have everybody wear the right clothes and come up and enjoy themselves. So we set up the first contest there at Big Bear, and then on the evolution of the doctrine continued.
Yes.
We got to thinking about what we should be doing rather than what we were doing. And this is, I should say, the birth of the concept of the practical pistol. It wasn't the first man to try it. I would say the first man to experiment with practical pistol shooting was Major Fairbairn, who was with the Shanghai police in China. And he wrote up some things about using the hand cut on the street in man-against-man situations. See, up to that time, the idea of pistol shooting was targets. And all they gave you to learn where the target shot was a piece of paper at 25 meters, and you could shoot long hand. And this is not very impressive. That's not the way a pistol is used. But in these practical matches we had, we were able to examine where a pistol is used and try to build a program of pistol technique which measured what happens on the street or on the battlefield. And this means that your range comes in from 25 meters into 6, 8 in their arm's length. And you may say, well, if you can hit 25, can't you hit at 6? Yeah, you can, but it's not the same way, and the time pressure is entirely different.
Yes, yes.
And so our problem of speed entered into there because we assumed that the pistol being a defensive arm, that you're never going to know what's happened. You can't make an appointment for an emergency. And since the pistol is an emergency weapon, it must start from a dead situation and be able to respond without warning into a combat situation. And so we set up the matches that way and had individuals compete against others, and we began to have lots of fun with that. Yeah, that's fun. It's an interesting game, and a whole lot of people think they're very good at it, and they weren't. That first year we had a lot of shooters. The first contest at Big Bear, we had 170 shooters or something like that, and only about 3 of them knew what they were doing, which was, I guess we were fortunate that nobody got shot, but we were always safe. We never had any accidents.
Yeah. Yeah, the first time that I met you was at a kind of a very informal match, and I believe it was either 1963 or 64 out in the Antelope Valley, and it was kind of an abandoned farmhouse or some corrals in a little building and so forth, and we shot a match there. And at that point in time, that was kind of the beginning of some informal combat shooting, if you will. There was Jack Weaver was there, Ray Chapman, Eldon Carl, I believe.
Del Reed.
And Del Reed, oh yeah. And at that time, there was quite an assortment of handguns being shot at that time. Of course, you used the .45 automatic. Ray was kind of in the transition between the single action and the .45, and Jack Weaver was using the K38, I believe, and did it quite well. And at that time, I believe that's when the Weaver stance came out. Yeah.
That's when that happened. We didn't know how to do this, and when we had the first, we might say, combat match, just simulating a man-against-man fight, as you say, some of the boys went for a single action. He said, the peacemaker, the single action army,
Yes.
that's the only way to fly in a gunfight. Everybody knows that. You see it in the movies. And so several of them did. Others had, well, not too many had DAs, but Noka, who won the first match, he used a 38. And Jack Weaver, great revolver man. And I and one other guy, he was the service pistol, because everybody knows you can't hit anything with that. I mean, this was an assumed truism that the .45 automatic is not capable of doing any shooting, except we won. And this established the fact that the 1911 service pistol was the most efficient weapon there is. The best combination of power and controllability. It exists. It delivers a serious blow, and it does it more easily than others. We used to jeer at Weaver because he used a .38 revolver, and we said, you take the easy way, it doesn't kick. It was wrong, because what happened was that our pistol was the way to go, was the easy way to go.
Yes.
It was hard. He became a marvel with that DA. He did things with that double action revolver that I wouldn't have thought possible. Well, that's true of competition. We do things today, and now that situation has gone on for 2 or 3 generations, so that everybody would have thought impossible. But they could be done if you put enough gold in. And the greatest incitement to excellence is competition, matches. Not so much money as it is just prestige. People build their egos by winning a match. They get a little brass cup, and that's a way to get excellence.
Yes.
Do things well. And we ran the matches like that, and finally discovered after a while that the service pistol was the most efficient weapon. I know Ray Chapman, as you mentioned, was transferred. He first showed up shooting a single action army, peacemaker. But as soon as he found that the auto was winning, he went there. Del Reed was a great master of the single action, still is. But when he shoots against us, he uses the auto because it's easier to hit with. And We had, of course, you found that 'cause you joined the party about that time.
Yeah. When you moved to Big Bear, you were the real guide, if you will, or leader in the pistol shooting, and started to form the Southwest Combat Pistol League, and you were the first director. Yeah, how did that come about? How did you get going from a little informal shoots now and then to an organization that really started the sport itself?
People enjoyed these practical matches. We set them up so everyone was different, once a month. You see, our first match was so successful that everybody wanted to do it again right away. The idea of doing it only once a year was unsat.
Yes.
And they said, well, let's do something else. Let's have a match every month. Well, we can do that, except it's a long way to drive from most of Southern California to Big Bear. So we came to the conclusion that participating clubs over the Southwest each could be qualified to put on a match if they set it up. And then we would ask them to change the venue on the system every time, so every match would be different.
Yes.
Pose different challenges. And that moved around so that we finally wound up with a match every month or thereabouts, excluding the middle of winter. We didn't have them in January and February. But the rest of the year we had shooting a major match every month. And we learned all sorts of things we wouldn't have thought before. The things that people think are truths of today, nobody knew about them then. And we discovered how to use it. Now, the thing that comes out here is that the term of practicality is not fully understood. And as soon as you start putting matches into it for competition, it not only produces excellence, but it also loses sight of the objective.
Yes.
The objective of a service pistol is self-defense. But no matter how complicated you make your matches, you're still going to have people who think that winning a match is the only important thing, and not learning how to use a weapon well. Well, we corrected as much as we could. It worked pretty well. We had a good program, and we kept, as long as we controlled it from Big Bear, we kept the versatility in. But when it moved to national and then international status, we found that people couldn't do that. In Europe, for example, IPSC, the International Practical Shooting Confederation, it runs up against European regulation. And for instance, drawing a pistol to a holster is unheard of in Europe. That's a terrible thing to do.
Exactly.
And
yes.
So today, for example, they have IPSC matches, so-called practical matches, in which you must start standing a yard back from a table, and the pistol will be placed on a table facing downrange, and you start by going to the table and picking it up. And you can only do one sort of thing that way. You can't move around. So practicality is the aim. Practical shooting. That's why we call it the practical pistol shooting. But it's only practical as long as it duplicates the street. And if you cause a match that doesn't replicate the street, you haven't got a good match. And many people don't understand that.
Yeah, I understand that.
Whenever you see a practical match set up, you find that it couldn't happen in the street. There's no way this situation can arise in a gunfight. And so that invalidates the match. But they have forgotten that that's the reason we have this thing, is to replicate the street. That's fun.
Yeah, there was one particular segment of pistol shooting that you instilled, and I think that the shooting today in competition is kind of getting away from it. And you really started to extend this, and that's the distance, the practical distance of the .45 automatic or the handgun itself. I remember in the very, very early stages of Southwest Combat Pistol League that you had the advanced military. I believe you designed that, and that is probably one of the more practical exercises and pieces of competition that I've ever shot, because we went out to 30 yards and 40 yards and shot from the prone position. We used a certain amount of time fire, but that was an extremely practical thing. What made you figure that 45 was better or could be shot at those distances rather than point blank?
curiosity. Want to see if it would work, because we found people were shooting very well. And restricting it to arm's length did not explore the capabilities of the weapon. We found, for instance, that properly used, you can stay reliably on a man-sized target at 100. Now, maybe that doesn't matter. I've looked and looked for people who won gunfights at 100 yards. Haven't found them yet. I found only one case I heard of in which the shot was taken almost 50. But that doesn't happen. So we have to play partly our imagination of what might happen as against what does happen, and see how that works out. And we found, of course, that all the weapons can do things that nobody thought they would do. The revolver man always thought that they could outshoot us at a distance. Well, it's the man, not the gun. And Jack Lever can outshoot almost anybody, but there's only one Jack Lever.
Yeah. I remember sitting at your fireplace one night up at Big Bear. We were having a few scotches on the rocks, and we got talking, and it was a very interesting little piece of information and interchange of ideas. And I asked you, Jeff, I said, how far do you think that we can go with the 45 automatic? Do you think it's going to be an offensive weapon? And you looked at me and said, let's see how far we can take it. This is kind of what this exercises are all about. And now looking back at that time, did you ever think that the 45 automatic would endure this long and become quite the weapon that it is today?
I hadn't thought of it. I hadn't thought of that, but it turned out it landed in my lap, and we found out that these things can happen. At the demonstrations that we put on at Big Bear in the summertime for the public,
yes,
with an audience, we had one when we put the target as far away as we could get it in the trees. It was 163 yards.
Yes, I remember that.
You remember that? And we broke it on the first shot.
Yes.
Of course, those people by that time were pretty much trick shots. Everybody was awfully good. Competition, honing everybody's skill. But we broke the balloon at 163 yards, and then we turned around and split the bullet on the axe blade.
Oh, I'm going to get to that in a minute.
I still have the axe.
Yes, I know. I remember that was the old Miners' Day at Big Bear, and it was a leather slap. And you did the exhibition, had the steel plate with the axe, and there was a balloon placed on each side of the axe blade, and you drew the pistol, pap, and you could see the strike of the bullet split on the it left its mark on the axe, and both balloons broke simultaneously.
That was a great shock to everybody. I would say the audience assumed that I did that on purpose. That I regularly can split a bullet on an axe blade. Well, actually, I didn't know that I couldn't. I was pretty sure I couldn't duplicate that. But I could get a shot into maybe a 10-inch circle at that time and speed and break both clay pigeons or balloons. But to break it on the axe blade was sort of startling. And I had my story all figured out to tell the audience what they saw. And then I said, oh, well, you saw it. You saw me do it. There it is. Take it home. And it was, you see, I had broken the balloon at 163 on the first round. And then I split it on the axe blade. And I said, you guys want to play with it? This is a good gun. This is a gun to use. But exaggerate. We exaggerate a lot. You can't say it was pure luck, but it was certainly a lot of luck. I mean, I can get the shot under those circumstances or you could, get shot into a maybe 8-inch circle. But that isn't hitting the axe blade. It just happened at that time.
Yeah. When you were living in Big Bear, you hosted a lot of matches. One of them a month at Big Bear, and we usually shot on a Saturday, and sometimes and you were a very gracious host. Saturday evening, cooking the chicken and having a few drinks, which was quite good. And then the following day, a few of us would go out and we would set up targets at usually great distances. And I think that's probably the first time that I have shot the 45 at over 100 yards. And we were hitting the target more often than not. And that was a pretty good achievement. And then we went out a little bit further in distance, and the handgun was extremely accurate. Do you ever think it would be that accurate at that distance?
Well, whether we thought so, it is. Now, I'm sure you remember one of your finest hours. We took you down to Christie's Circle, and you aced the circuit that day. You outshot both Red Chapman and me.
Yes. And a couple other things that we used to do. And you started it, and I still do it today when I can, and I like to introduce that to people. That was the tactical walk. You remember that?
That was what we were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how practical this is, but we just set the targets around at random, certain amount of concealment, different distances, different directions, and you wander through it and take out your adversaries as you see them. And it's great fun.
Yeah.
You know.
With all of this shooting going on and the knowledge that was coming out of it, I think at that point in time you were starting to think about teaching and going to various countries, and you were also teaching law enforcement departments the advantages of the 45 automatic versus a revolver. When did you start getting the idea of having a permanent facility to teach?
I can't pick out the date, but I do recall that it happened when my children finally grew up and left home, and when our family began to break up, and the need for one place with all of us together was no longer there. I figured I better get out of California, because the atmosphere in California is becoming too constricted. Too many regulations, too much of a problem here. So I figured let's get out of this place and find someplace better. That's the reason I moved to Arizona, which is not perfect, but it's better than what we had a good school in Arizona. And the year, I think, was about 1960. Make it 1962. I was doing very well both in the United States teaching and in Europe, because I'd been approached by a German newspaper man to go to Germany and show them things like that. So I did, and that established my reputation internationally to a certain degree. And so I was approached by people from Guatemala. Guatemala is a turbulent country. Most countries in Central America are turbulent.
Yes.
And
That's a good thing.
that one team down there wanted me to come down and show them how to do it. So I did. I went to Guatemala and I spent about 3 weeks there, and the results were quite interesting, especially since I was mainly concerned with the bodyguard of the president-to-be. He had been elected, but he hadn't taken office yet. And it was Carlos Arana, and he was a good man, I thought. I liked him, but of course there's a heavy hand involved, and he had a bodyguard, personal bodyguard, 26 men, and of the 26, we had about 3 that I would have as my bodyguard. I'm not talking about skill now, I'm talking about character. These people were working for the president because he had saved their lives. They were dog-like.
Yes.
And the guy was going to get shot and he saved his life, that sort of thing. So these 26 men were religious about their job, which is good. You can't be sure of that when you sign up bodyguards. Who's he working for? Anybody who signs up to protect you can be bought for more money. And if the side that wants you dead can pay the bodyguard to look away, and then he don't cheat on you because he gets killed in the same action. But people are damned innocent, and nobody realizes that when you're hired as a bodyguard, the guy who hires you doesn't want you to live. They don't realize that, and yet it's kid stuff. It's been comic strips.
Yeah.
But they don't think it doesn't apply to me. I mean, George, not you, Georgia. Yes, George. So that notion of bodyguarding has always struck me a little bit queer. I went down there and said, I don't think you gentlemen want bodyguards. I think you want me to teach you how to protect yourself. And so I was working with various people in Guatemala. I went back a second time because the bodyguard of the president was not a group that I would want to get too close to. But the other people, these were mostly business executives involving the various corporations in Guatemala. And so I went back there 2 or 3 more times just to hold teaching sessions for these local people, always insisting that the man is his own protection. You can't hire anybody else. It's so darn funny. Even recently, like Madame Nehru, and she was killed by one of her own bodyguards. That's the way the world is. But just an awful lot of people don't know how the world is.
Yes.
And you see it wandering around, people making absolute fools of themselves. And you can point it out, Do you know what you just did? What you just said? Don't you know that? Huh, me? Well, I guess I lived too long. I've never been, as far as I know, targeted myself, although I've had a couple of wartime experiences. But I don't know that I've ever been set up by my own customer. But I'm always aware of the possibility.
Always, yes.
Well, I had lots of fun that way, but I noticed that my wife was somewhat concerned because every time I came back from a trip overseas, sometimes Latin America, I always be watching that, who's behind the corner. I just get too in-depth in it. Not to overstep it, but I just get very, very conscious of what's behind me. Watch your back. And that points out the thing that it's not so much the weapon or the technique of the weapon, it's the man teaching. You don't teach pistol craft because he won't learn anyway, but you may teach him how to think. You don't win because you are a better shot. You win because you thought right. I have never, well, I can't say that absolutely because I've trained so many people now. I'm not sure. But I don't know of cases in which a man survived a lethal situation because he was a much better shot. He was a good shot, but he didn't win because of his technique. He won because of his thought. He won because he was thinking right. He was aware of the problem, where everything is, who's behind you. We don't have eyes in the back of our head, so we train that way. It's a funny thing, just getting off to one side, but I know my wife mentioned this. When I was teaching at Gunsight, people would ask me, how would I know that? Because I'm looking at you, the guy over here is doing it wrong, and I say, Joan, get your elbow on the piece. How does he know? I said, and she said, he has eyes in the back of his head. And maybe so.
Yeah, Gunsight was the first professional school specifically set up to teach combat pistol craft. Isn't that right, Jeff?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would know otherwise. I would say that this outfit in China was a pioneer ahead of me, Fairbairn's outfit. But he was a government outfit. He was not private.
Yes.
He was working for the Chinese government. But as far as private schools, I think we probably did.
Yeah. Did you consider that a kind of a gamble in the beginning?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Of course.
Yeah.
Life is like that.
But it caught on.
Yeah.
And it's basically the flagship of all the other schools.
I would like to think so. Of course, I have dropped out now. When I sold the school, the management was not really interested in what I was interested in. And that continues. When I sold the school, the objectives changed. I, for instance, was always interested in excellence in the school. How good can you get? Whereas most commercial men aren't interested in how good anybody is. They're interested in how much money he has. How many customers can I get? And for instance, I refused people because I didn't think they were qualified mentally. Well, that doesn't matter. If they got a check, they can buy it. Well, that's another way of looking at it. I know there's a lot of it here. What do people live with? Money, whatever. That's the reason I go on looking at these things. What the hell is that for? Make yourself enemies. I find that question, what is it for, is enough to upset a whole lot of commercial people. What's it for? It's to sell, for God's sake. Of course. But the principle of excellence is another matter. And to try to bring excellence and profit into the same is not really possible, but you can do approximation. For a long time, we were pretty close, pretty close. I never ran the school with the idea of making money, and that's one of the reasons why it did not make any money. It kept us alive, paid the utilities, yes. But that's all. But to try to make money out of it is, well, that's something else again. Maybe it's fun. I notice that certain professionals in the world are doing very well, but they happen more or less by accident. I noticed, for instance, that Michael Schumacher, before he finished his career, was paid a salary of $132 million a year. That's pretty good change. And that's because he can drive a car better than anybody else in the world without any question. And how does he make money on it? Well, it's there.
Yes.
It's there. Advertising, of course, the Formula One circuit makes money out of customers, people coming to the shoots, to races. Now, I didn't think that many people came to races, but they do in Europe.
Yeah, you've always been good at coming up with slogans and sayings and logos and stuff. And one thing I've had a curiosity about, at Gunsight, the logo is the raven. Mm-hmm. And how did you come by that?
Well, new story. The raven, yes. The bird of Odin. My wife is of Norse extraction, go far enough back. She is, her family name was from Pixley, was from a Viking. And so we thought about that and thought that the logo of the raven on her side would do well as a badge. Now, it makes sense in the Dark Ages to use a raven because a raven is black. Mm-hmm. You can make your own paint. You mix charcoal with fish oil, you've got black paint. What do you do with that? Well, if you're put two ships together in a task force, one ship has a guide on the other. So we on the symbol, we will put on the sail, we'll paint the raven so that when the sun comes up, where is everybody? Over there. So they used that partly because it was easy to do and partly because the raven was a bird of Odin. Odin was, of course, a Norse god, and he had two ravens, Hugin and Munin, on his shoulders. And they'd brought him in the world. They were his intelligence service, his G2.
Yes.
They'd go for him, carry the bird back to him. So we thought that was a good combination. And we could put ravens all over everything at the ranch and use it on the Norse background.
Then you came up with something else, and this was still carried over to today with IPSC, and that was back in the old Southwest Combat Pistol League, DVC. How'd you come up with that?
Well, that's from the Latin, Diligentia vis celeritas, DVC. Those are the three elements which make up competence with a handgun. Diligentia, precision. You can't do anything with a pistol unless you hit it. Your gun is no good unless you get hits. You've got to hit the target. Vis, V-I-S, that's power. Vim, vigor, and vitality, this, you got to hit hard. If you hit a guy well but don't bother them, you haven't accomplished anything. So you must hit hard. And celeritas, from same word as celerity, quickness, speed, power, precision, power, and quickness. DVC are the three elements necessary to gunfighting. And if you miss one, you've lost them all. And that has happened because too many people are trying to reduce power to make the weapon easier to shoot, which is losing sight of your V in the VC. They should take the V out because they're not implementing anymore. You have to, pistols don't hit very hard. Oh, they've got a couple here to show they hit pretty hard. This big around. But the kind that you carry, well, if you put the bullet in the right place, yes. But they don't have any power to spare. They're not that powerful.
Another thing that you have done that has been basically the standard of conversations in the industry today is your color code system.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that many times, but tell us about it.
People are blown away with that. That's funny. I don't think it's anything remarkable about it, but I devised that about 20 years ago. And I'm not going to say that I'm the first person ever to attach colors to a problem, but I'm not. But I find it used the way we do, it is unique, and yet I can't get that point across to the audience. The color code using conditions white, yellow, orange, and red is pretty easy to learn, and you keep the number of choices down so that you don't have too many things to think about. And this color code depicts your state of mind when you are in a combat situation, or can be. The thing is that most people, thank God, are a definite mental block against taking life. When you shoot at somebody, you may kill him. You may say, well, I didn't shoot to kill, but look, if you put a powerful pistol in this, you just very likely kill him. And there's a block against that. Not just against people, but against taking life in general. We find many people in Africa today, they get there and they finally say, there he is, that's the buffalo. And he says, do I shoot? Yes, that's what you came for. But there's this barrier. And of course, when your adversary, the human being, is higher. So you have to develop a system by which you can make yourself ready to go when you need to go. And this is something that the audience has never been able to get. The color code does not depict the state of danger you're in. But it depicts the readiness you are to take hostile action, deadly action. When you're in white, which is what we'd like to be most of the time, like now, and you confront a problem, you're going to get a definite block. My God, is this real? I mean, I can't believe this. And you get killed in white. When you move to yellow, which you can do quite easily, yellow means I may have to defend myself today. Today, before the sun goes down, I may have to use this firearm. And when I put it on, put a shell in, put it in my place. That cartridge in the barrel there, that's the cartridge I may use. Not only to save my life, but to get put in jail. You can't tell if I shoot the wrong man. So that cartridge, the one that's in there now, is ready to go. You got that? Understand that? You ready? Ready. You're in yellow. In orange, you shift to specific targets. Orange, that guy, that one right there. I may have to do him. Now, in white, you almost can't overcome that barrier. By the time you worked it out, you're dead. In yellow, you're in pretty good shape. You're in much better shape than most people in the world. But you're still not safe because there's this step of whom? Who is the problem? In orange, you're pretty much there. Because orange is that guy. The guy I see standing, the guy I've been standing there all morning, and he hasn't moved. He's gone out and come back only for another cigarette. What's he doing that for? He may be the problem, that guy. He may be the man. That's orange. Not because you're in deadly danger, but because you're ready to take the action. And the problems are entirely different. Finally, when you say, when his gun comes out and you look up at the muzzle, yeah, this is it. Now, in white, you can't overcome that barrier against taking life. In yellow, you're in better shape. In orange, you're in pretty good shape. In red, you're go. In red, you can do it. You've made a decision. In red, you have decided you're going to shoot this guy, and you put it on thing. The problem of whether you're going to go or not is gone. And that happens when the trigger starts.
Yes.
When he comes out with his gun, he shot you, and you feel a tugging sensation, and you're bleeding. Yeah, that's the guy. And you're ready to take the action. So that's the way the color code works. And yet, no matter how often I describe it and teach it, people don't get it.
Yeah.
I hear people parroting the color code and getting it wrong and all the time. Of course, I can't say it. It's right. If this guy wants to use it some other way, fine, it's his business. But he should not say that I told him that.
Yes, Jeff, you're known as the guru of pistol craft,
Right.
and everybody knows you're legendary with the 45 and bringing pistol shooting up to what it is today. But I recall back at Big Bear, you always had an interest in rifle. I recall us shooting 500 and 700 yards there at Big Bear with the rifle. And you kind of carried that over into gunsight too, haven't you? Yeah,
Yes,
how did all this come about?
I've been I put on rifle schools at Gunsight for about 5 years before I sold. And I was working on systems for teaching people to use a rifle, which are, I think, superior than you can get in the service because we can do one-on-one.
Yes.
In the service, you've got 100 men, you've got to get them through the course as fast as possible, as much money, as little money as possible, and as much ammunition, as little ammunition as possible. But you can't dictate that. When you've got a civilian situation, you can take a guy one at a time and run him through. So we can achieve results with a rifle, which are practically 100%. People have been going, from my background, to Africa now for 5 to 7 years, on 10. And the results are absolutely clean. Not because they're marvelous shots, because they win it well.
Yes.
But because they're thinking right and they're using it right and they're doing it right. And what we have a really tremendous record. Now just in pertaining that, over there at Wendy, she just got back from an African session. And she went there with 9 women.
Uh-huh.
And there was no failures at all. Nothing got away lost. Nobody failed in the exercise because they were shooting right.
When did you first come up with the ideas for the Steyr Scout, which is an excellent rifle, very practical rifle, I may add?
That's the idea. Well, the Scout is pretty much a triumph, I consider. But the idea, I guess I first thought about it over in Arizona, on a pig hunt. I was hunting with a pistol, and this associate showed up on a motorcycle with a Springfield 03 that he had really done a job on. I said, oh, that's a really useful gun. It was light, short, handy, clean, and so I thought about maybe that's the way we should go. But I find that the customer doesn't so much want versatility. He wants a number of different guns. So the Scout rifle, the Steyr Scout, which is over here on display,
Yes.
is the rifle. If you have one of those, you don't need another rifle. If we're talking about elephants, I wouldn't recommend for an elephant. But for any other purpose, it's got it. I've satisfied myself it does everything right and has all sorts of hidden features that other people don't know about. I was over there at the show at this demonstration, and the guy demonstrating that rifle didn't know about 3 of the features the rifle had. You didn't know that, did you? That's the reason the trigger guard is like that. Well, I'm really delighted with that. That's something I'd like to say. It's not perfect. It's pretty close, but it's close. It's closer than anything else around. I would say it fails slightly mainly because it's not available left-handed. I pushed that problem into the factory. It's got to be available both right and left-handed. They said, oh yeah, sure, we'll do that. And they didn't. Well, okay. But now I know 3 cases of people who went to Africa who did not take a scout because they left home.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's not, they did a study on it and decided that the cost effect, the cost of building a left-handed was not enough for the additional pocket. And I'm sure that's a businessman's way of looking at it. But that keeps the weapon from being perfect.
Yes.
The blazer, for example, is almost, when you want to change caliber to a blazer, you have to change the bolt. $500. Of course, you don't if you use cartridges of the same head, you can get a 306 and a 270, and they don't do that. But if you want to jump from a 270 to a 375, you've got to get a different bolt. And well, I suppose people who go that well don't worry about expense. But a $500 accessory is a bit high.
Yeah, how'd you come up with the idea of taking an extra magazine and storing it in the buttstock? I think that's quite revolutionary.
Well, okay, but I don't remember. It just seems so natural.
It is, yes.
Why not?
Why hasn't it been done before?
Why doesn't everybody do that?
Yeah. We've talked an awful lot about various things and gun sight, but one thing that we haven't ever covered, and I don't really know the answer to this, and is how did you decide on Paulden?
Well, when we decided we were going to move from California, we looked at the Continental Divide from top to bottom and discovered right away that, well, there's a marvelous country up north, marvelous, wonderful country, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho. The winters are unbearable. You can't survive in those winters except as a stunt. So we had to come back down south. That limited us to Arizona, New Mexico. We can hit the Continental Divide in Arizona, New Mexico, or southern Colorado, but the political vibes in New Mexico are not awfully good. It's full of Democrats. And so we pretty much restricted to Arizona. Well, wandering around Arizona, we just happened on a section that was being sold for divorce. The second settlement for divorce came up. I had to put the block of 640 acres up. So I snatched it up quick like that before it sold again. And that gave me that piece of ground. It's an awfully good piece of ground. Its problem is, of course, its direction of fire is wrong. Direction of fire in the northern hemisphere should always be to the north. Well, we couldn't get that, but we got everything else. We had any distance you go in. Lots of varied terrain.
What would you like to see in firearms today? We'll start with the handgun. You were involved many years ago with the Bren 10, which was 10 millimeter. And what would you like to see done today?
I don't think we need anything more. We've got what we need. I suppose there are certain little accessories or slight modifications, the kind of thing that you do, rounding off the sharp edges. You cut yourself on that gun if you don't watch it. So things of that sort. But as far as a new gun, I don't know. I've been carrying a 45 automatic for longer than most people have been alive, and I'm quite satisfied with it. I don't. Apart from such additions and improvements that you make on your guns, I don't think about a new gun. The 45 cartridge is a measure there. It's almost powerful enough. It's quite controllable.
Do you think we'll ever get anything any better than the 45 ACP for pistol?
Bullet design. Bullet design. If you have a flat point, that would be a step forward. That's a very minor thing. Yeah. You can do that just by a whistle.
The rifles and stuff that today that they're using over in Afghanistan and the desert, as you call Mesopotamia, do you think there's...
I didn't call it, that's Greek.
Yes.
The Greeks call that.
Yeah. Do you think that there's going to be a change in our small arms armament or design on rifles?
Well, they keep doing that. They keep doing that in the headquarters, Pentagon, just because they got to have job stuff for people to do.
Yeah.
And so they said, what do we need? Well, the problem they have with small arms is that small arms are just not very important to modern action. They are important to the individual guy, but to the general, to the commander,
Yes.
whether he has a 223 or a 6.8 isn't going to matter very much. And so they don't really have we have a demanding issue to fight. And so I don't know, I'm speaking out of turn because I'm not at the Pentagon. I don't know what those guys are doing. But I would say that the 223 was a bad mistake, and still is, but we're stuck with it. And so there we are. And they find that headshot from that up in here, it'll do pretty well at short range.
Yes.
But the cartridge, I don't know. They keep trying to fuss around, and they come up sometimes with good guns, sometimes with bad. Now we in the United States have been fantastically fortunate in World War II. We came up with the M1 Garand rifle. Tremendous design. That's the best thing that ever happened to infantrymen. And so we dropped that.
Yes.
And it's too big and heavy for the little guy off the street, I guess. Well, I've trained thousands of men with the M1. I don't want anything better than that. I don't think anything as good. It is a bit heavy, but on the other hand, that's what you do your push-ups with.
Sure. We're using more and more sniper rifles today at long range, various calibers, mainly the 50 caliber. And you had a project, as what you called the project. Tell us about that.
Oh, that? Well, I'd like to hold a contest on that, but I can't get anybody who wants to try it. I've tried it on some people theoretically, and they won't play. I was going to, we call it the 20-20-20-10. How can you place 20 shots in the 20-inch circle in 20 seconds at 1,000 yards? And people say, oh no, that's impossible. When I brought the Presidente back from South America, everybody tried it, said that's impossible. You can't make par. Hell, it's almost half that time. So I'm convinced that if we tried, if we put enough of an award there, that the project, the 20-20-20, would be caught somebody. I'm not saying I can do it, but I've seen them come pretty close. I've done it at 600. The longest range we had was 630. I've been able to do it there, but 600 is a long way from 1,000.
Yes. And
it takes a hell of a shot to do that. And we don't need any new equipment. We have equipment now that can do that. It's the man we haven't got.
Uh-huh.
And if the rewards were high enough, as they are in athletics, we'd find a man.
Yeah. What kind of caliber do you think is going to be doing that?
Oh, the 308 will do it.
Do you?
Sure.
Yeah.
It'll do it. As far as using a big cartridge, the 50 BAR, I find from talking to people who've been doing shooting with it in tactical situations that the utilization of that big cartridge is mostly useful at mid-ranges on equipment, for breaking up cars, for smashing engine blocks, going through armored vehicles, going through penetration at medium ranges, 200-300 yards in there. And sure, up to 800. But when you start talking about clear over past Fort Mudge, you've got a problem, man, who can't hit anything against it. You can't hit your target. So what difference does it make whether it hits or not?
The more we seem to push the envelope of the equipment itself, we seem to do more and more modifications, some personal and some that are quite inventive. I recall that when you first started the combat shooting, or Southwest Combat Pistol League, it was just basically the single action, the revolver, and the .45 auto, just as it was issued to our servicemen. And we made quite a few advancements with that, but we primarily kept the same caliber. Tell us a little bit about those advancements and modifications.
When people are using a .45 auto, which they have under our guidance for a long time, the problem comes up, it's too big. And it's all right with my hand, I have medium large, but it's too big for a small hand. So the first thing to do with a 1911 is shrink the butt. bring that circumference between the grip strap and the trigger. Bring that from here down to here. And then get your hand in there. True for women and children, and men with small hands. I know 2 or 3 men were pretty good combat types, but their hands were too small for the gun. So the first thing to do with that gun is trigger. But that's a big operation. That calls for more money than most customers want to try. So beyond that, there's 3 things. Sights that you can see. The sights that they put on the gun in 1911 were just a couple of blobs up there. You can use bird dropping for the same result. But put sights on as you can see. And I like sights that are square. You see them all around. But that's one of the things to do. Sights that you can see. And as far as the front side goes, the idea of making it vertical so it doesn't get light, it draws a lot of leather. So I would say, sloping the front side, I fill the center with a red stripe. Square butt with a red stripe down the middle, so I can catch it. So I would use sights that you can see. A trigger that you can roll. A trigger on most 911 is terrible, but you can put a good trigger on with a little work. A good trigger is quite possible. I have them on my gun. One is that's an aftermarket accessory. It doesn't come over the counter. And finally, a dehorning job. All the sharp edges, up, down, around. Every place is like this, not but it's a hand tool. If you stand out there filled with sharp, hot stuff, you cut your hand with it. And that's those 3 things. And of course, the other thing, let's see, sights. You can see triggers your man a dehorning job. Oh yeah, I'd reverse the direction of sock screws. The sock screws both right. Tighten them up, turn back and back off the wall. One of them pressed, but the other one's either are small details. Yeah. I used to play around more with socks when I was younger. I all the time be tightening the thing up a little bit too tight. Now when I try to back off, I back off the sock too. Those things. I don't think of anything else, but
Yeah, what's your thoughts on an ambidextrous safety?
I don't know that you're ever going to use a pistol with a long hand in a hurry. Only reason you need a speed safety is because you're in a hurry.
Yes.
If you're going to shift to your weekend or everything, like you're in bad shape. You don't need any speed. You can use a regular safety. I don't know that it's necessary. If you haven't, just want to watch working it loose, because most of them work loose.
And what about fixed sights versus adjustable sight?
I prefer fixed sights.
Fixed sights?
I used to give a lot of thought to adjustable sights, but I found that nobody was shooting sharply enough to matter. And they're all within just much of everything, and I can't shoot that well. So.
One of the more popular innovations today are the night sights or tritium inserts. Do you think there's a need for that, or?
I don't know. I'd like to have somebody go out and shoot and find out in the field. I haven't heard any. I've got a pretty good source of supply coming back from Mesopotamia, and nobody has said that the night sights are that much important. But then, most of the stuff takes place at night, near me. That distance doesn't matter.
Yeah, we have the pistol now carrying it. I remember first seeing you with the shoulder holster, and then you moved to a hip holster. And what would you like to see today? What do you consider a good sidearm holster?
Hey, I haven't been scanning the market. I don't know what's available. I've got along fine with a friction type Yaki slide for.
Yeah, I remember the Yaki slide.
But
yes.
The trouble with that is it wears holes in your upholstery.
I know when you would go down to Central America, you had the Yaki slide. Yeah. And do you like leather versus the polymer or Kydex?
I think plastic is probably better.
Do you?
I don't. Well, you can make it the way you want it. leather, of course, is like a wood stock. I think a wood stock on a rifle is kind of a step backwards. A stock on a rifle should be a proper plastic. But people one look at the stethoscope. Ugly, looks terrible. I don't care how it looks. I don't know how it works.
Well, a couple of years ago, you sent me your 1911 A1, and it had a military bottom to it, the frame, and it had property of U.S. On that. And was that the frame that, or the pistol that you carried the Marine Corps? How did you come about that?
Did you ever send it back?
No, I still have it.
I thought so. At Stanford when I was a boy, an old grad issued every year a 1911 pistol stock to the cadet officer who had the highest grade point average. He had a shoot expert with a pistol, and he had to be average or better. And so I won that, and I carried that in World War II. Yeah. They don't do much shooting in a war, they're too busy.
Oh, yes. Who was it that put the commercial slide on that? Was that Jim Hogue or Erman Swenson?
I don't remember. Probably Swenson, I don't remember.
Okay.
I think
yeah.
so.
There's two hallmarks on that pistol. One of them is Erman Swenson. He accurized that, and then Jim Hogue also did some work on it. He also has his name on that pistol.
Huh. I would feel I don't remember Hogue.
Okay.
I remember him, but I don't remember that job.
Okay,
I do
that's
remember
understandable.
Swenson, yeah.
Yeah. And a couple of parts on it are gold-plated, and which is kind of getting a little bit thin at this time. But I'll say one thing, when you sent it to me, you wanted some modification to it, and we discussed, hey, let's keep it as is, and you just clean it up, and keep it as is, because that's a historical firearm. It really is. It was your first.
We may, because we're not talking about a museum. And if the museum goes, there are a whole lot of collector's items which have to come back to it.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. That thing is spick and span at this time. And just waiting for that museum and a home.
Yeah, well, I have a number of pieces up to go in there.
Okay. You also sent me a 1903 barreled action rifle.
Yeah.
And I'm going to resurrect that and put it back into the proper stock.
Yeah, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, it will. Yeah. That'll also be another nice piece.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm going to parkerize it the whole bit.
Right.
Bring it back. Turn it back to its days of glory.
That 1903 action is not appreciated.
I know it.
Awfully good. Lots of features like the takedown system and detachable firing pin.
Absolutely.
All that stuff was great stuff. Nobody wants that anymore.
There's one piece of history that I fondly recall. You and I took a trip one time, and this was prior to you finding Paulden. And we went in my Corvette from Big Bear all the way down into Arizona and looking around. And the objective of the trip was to find a place for your school. And we went over an old road that was really rough. And I think it was somewhere around Snowflake. And you were trying to find the hunting camp that your father first sent you to. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
We found it.
Yes, we did.
Diamond Rock Lodge.
Yes, that's the buffalo over the fireplace.
In Diamond Rock.
Yeah.
That was a place. Yeah, we went there. We went there first as customers, and then I'm pretty sure that my dad arranged this because they went otherwise. But I worked there, being a bunch of dudes.
Yes.
Taking care of customers in the summertime. It was fun.
That was a fine time. I really enjoyed that. Just like I'm enjoying reminiscing with you right now, Jeff. And I do want to thank you very, very much for taking the time.
Well, a pleasure. You know, old soldiers always like to gas. So I can talk as long as I stand up.
Well, we'll get together again shortly and reminisce again. And I do really appreciate it. And we're going to pass this on to future generations.
Great. We hope so.
Good. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Good.